Everybody, it's September 20, what the, I just looked, September 24th, and it is day 43, and we're counting it down. The election is just in 42 days. Can you believe it? Today, wow. First of all, thank you for all the new subscribers. Holy smokes. I guess the white woman problem is getting some traction. The same as the podcast about being a good guy and being a good person. That really makes me happy because I don't want to ever I sound negative, and in some ways I'm being a little bit provocative because it's social media. I have to, I want to get views. I want to get views. I'm working hard. I want to get some views. So I pander a little bit. You know that, I know that. I'm in marketing. Pandering is my middle name. But I want to thank everybody for the new subscriptions and the new followers. Happy to have you here. I didn't do much with my hair today because I actually went and had coffee with a friend, which is a big deal for me. And in talking with her, I trialed a little of this content with her because she has had an interesting experience, and I hope she doesn't kill me for sharing this story. But I talk a lot about a kid that I say helped raise, because I don't know what to call it, but you all know what this is like. You have somebody has a kid goes through stuff. Sometimes they need another person. I love when Hillary said it takes a village to raise kids, because it does. Adults can't be everything to their kid, right? We just can't. And so I happen to parent and co-parent in a way that some of the people from my Havara, from the temple, some of the others of the people I'm with, we do a little co-parenting, meaning if your kid needs a break from you, it's nice to have somebody you trust, who has your values and everything, where you can let your kid talk to that person and not have to even know about it. You just know it's handled. And the rule has been, at least between me and my friend, that we don't necessarily share what we share with the kid, because we trust each other that we're giving the right guidance, and it allows the kid to not get triggered by their parent. It's an amazing thing. But my daughter goes to her child comes to me, and her child is the child that transitioned from female to male. And if you've heard me talk about the story, when I first met her child, I knew the child was male. From the first second I met this child, it just was so clear. The energy, the interests, the whole thing. And this is not the difference between presenting as male and tomboy. They're very different. Trust me. They're very different. Anyway, it was good to talk to this friend, because what happened to her, and it's really about what I'm going to get into here about why women should think differently. In fact, let me share the story in the context. First, let me just bring up the idea of what I'm going to talk about today, and then let me get into her story, because I trialed it on her and she said this point has merit. And so this is my hypothesis, and it only fits for some. It does not fit for everyone. I am not that silly that I think that I could come up with one rule that fits for everybody, other than you must breathe. There you go. There's your one rule. So if I were to go in to talk to what I want to talk about today, it has to do with micro versus macro thinking. I remember the first time I learned the word macro, which is so funny that I did, but I learned it because of economics. I think we don't talk to kids about micro and macro. They're words. They're not words that we use in lexicons every day. So micro, of course, being small, and macro being the big picture. So I was in macroeconomics, which I hear now is the wrong class to start with. It probably was the right class for me, but I was in a lecture hall of, I think, 1,000 students at USC, and I couldn't even see my professor. Like, he was so far away, and English was not his first language. Why do they put 1,000 kids who are paying an astronomical amount of money, because it was the University of Southern California, in a lecture hall with 1,000 students and a professor who doesn't have English as his first language? That wouldn't even have been the issue. He didn't go get coaching on how to articulate his broken English. That's what would have helped. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Thanks, Jen, for sharing. The deal is that there's kind of a way we come into the world, and we have certain innate traits or innate ways that we can deal with the world, right? So my hypothesis is that despite what we're born with innately, white women in particular, but I think a lot of women in general, anybody who lives in a patriarchy, women are encouraged. If you hear anything weird, that's my cat Weasley. Sorry, she's just old and weird. Anyway, women are socialized to think micro. In fact, if you think about it, it's kind of an interesting balance of relationship power. Is there tends to be someone who's kind of the micro expert and the macro expert, the big picture and the small detail picture. That's one way to think about it. Detail versus big picture. but I'm talking about this a little bit differently today because I do think women are taught to think micro in an effort to hold us back. So we're culturally driven to think micro. So that's very tactical versus strategic, right? Tactical be like, I'm going to move the car to the driveway and then I'm going to move the car to the school. Like, you don't think like that, but you know what I mean? It's very tactical versus strategic, which is I shouldn't even take the car today because tonight we're getting picked up and having the car is going to be a pain in the butt. Now, women think of that stuff. Please, these are like really lame examples, but the point is that you are trained. We are trained. My hypothesis is that we are trained to think micro because it keeps us in our place. But the problem is if a woman is often caught up in micro, and that's the details, guys. That's where we get freaking slammed, right? It's all in the details. We can be buried in details. In fact, often, like it's so hard on me. I'm so bad at details that I will actually put them out of my mind and go into denial. And I caught myself all weekend. This weekend, I denied that I need to go look at my money situation. I just denied it. I just pretended like it didn't exist. Stupid, 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 but my temporary coping mechanism, right? So sit with this for a moment with my hypothesis that we are trained, we are encouraged, we are rewarded for thinking micro and not thinking macro. We have a small impact. We don't have big impacts unless you're a remarkable woman and then God love you. But generally, we're trained to not have the big impact, right? To not have to be, I'm going to say invisible versus visible because the level of the decision making you're making is in a world where it might not be particularly visible. In fact, women often have suffered from being invisible. Our work is invisible. Our long hours is invisible. Our brains and our unique ability to be able to do multiple things at once, maybe not well, but we do it. We do multiple things at once. Those are ways that are also still invisible. So let me tell you about what I mean. And I'll get to my example about my friend. So let's talk. This is my favorite one because I happen to like money. I don't mean I like money because I like to spend it. I mean, I like the idea of what money can do and how we can influence money. And I like the idea of building wealth. But you know what? Women are not taught to build wealth. If I just said that sentence and you said, I never thought of it like that before. Welcome to being a woman. Women are taught to save. Save, 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 save. In fact, we're put on we're put on the pedestal for our saving abilities. Those women, they know how to cut corners. They know how to cost cut. In fact, we're all about saving. And frankly, a lot of men, I know this is me watching other people's relationships, but men are often the spenders. I hear this a lot from women where my husband just thought if there was money in the bank account, we had money. That still cracks me up. There's money in the bank account, you have money. Yeah, except that it's been accrued for because we know we're going to spend it. It's already committed. It pays the rent. You don't get to spend it. There are men out there like that. And the problem is the women are at home holding everything together. My mom was one of these. My dad made the money and my mom had to somehow figure out how to make it work. And he spent the money on his golf, on his girlfriend, on all the things, right? Because he felt like he was entitled. He'd made the money. As a woman who's made all my own money, let me tell you about entitled. You do feel entitled sometimes, but because I know exactly where the money goes, I'm a stingy son of a bitch. I spend my money very carefully. Like even this house that I bought, I did not go buy a house I could afford. I bought a house I could live with for a long time. That was a macro thought. I knew I'd have to heat it, clean it, maintain it, get it painted. I just had to remove a tree off the top of its roof. I had to pay for a new roof. Those things all are part of what it costs to have a house. But women are usually stuck with figuring out how they're going to make the payment every month, not what is the long-term value, not what is the macro view. So in the case of money, women often are charged with dollar stretching and prioritizing. And how did you make that work, honey? And the partner comes in just oblivious. Men, on the other hand, are charged with, well, they spend. They're not charged with spending, but they get the freedom to spend, right? It's kind of an entitlement. There's also the idea of them being able to decide how much they earn, which is true. They can decide if they want to be a mediocre earner or a killer earner. They get to make those decisions. And if you aren't having those conversations with your partner, that's on you. Go see my white women problem. That's on you. You need to be a decent partner in this relationship. Go watch The Good Guy. That's the one. How to be a good guy. That's the podcast you need to listen to help you and your partner find balance. But here's the deal. The other thing men are charged with, and this really, I got fired up over this over the weekend. And Rachel just made it worse last night. Men are often responsible for doing the investing. I'm going to tell you right now, if that's happening in your relationship, pull your head out of the damn ground and go get informed about where you're investing, because your husband could be investing in Donald J. Trump crypto. And if your husband's investing in crypto, you don't have life savings anymore. If your partner invested in Truth Social, you don't have a life savings anymore. If you've trusted the investing to your partner and you don't know where your money's going, change that immediately. Bad investments will ruin your retirement. For as hard as you worked, moreover, it could suck down your kids' college fund if you're saving for that. It could suck down your retirement fund for what you're planning to do in the future. There are so many risks. It could put your home at risk if your partner's investing in things that don't make long-term sense. So this is why you can't afford to just be micro in this relationship. You've got to be macro. And I, of course, always tell people, if I'm coaching, I tell you, first, most important thing you have to do is you have to know your truth. You have to know what the most important thing is to you. So is that security and having a home for the rest of your life? That was a high one on my list. We moved so much and I was so over it. And all I wanted was a house I could live in for the rest of my life. And I'll be damned, my house will be paid off in 2 years. Because that was like my truth, is I had to live somewhere that was going to be mine for a long time. So you need to figure out your truth. It may be that my truth is that, like, your truth could be my kids will go to college. That could be your truth. It could be that when you're 50 years old, you will go back to school and get your degree and do something completely different that you never did because you did the baby thing first. But if you didn't have babies, God, I love the single women, but they're not listening to this. The single women not listening to this. But if you're a single woman, holy crap, what is your truth? Because it may be that you're going to change the world or write a book or provide service to the other members of your family. You just don't know. I just don't know what your truth is. But find your truth. So my friend Heidi, she knew her truth. Her truth is, it will always be, Heidi's truth is that her children come first. Absolutely, positively true. She and her family were involved in the evangelical church in town. They were leaders. They ran groups. They had the marriage encounter things, whatever all these things are. I don't know all these things. They did the awawawa, that thing that happens on Wednesdays when kids get candy bars. What is that? Awani or something like that? I don't know what it is. But the point is, the point is they were in it up to their eyeballs. And then, and nothing, this is the most important part. Nothing changed, right? They were the same family they'd always been. And then they went ahead and told people that their child was going to be transitioning. And then they were cast out by the church. And Heidi's world was turned inside out. But because she knew her truth, and this is because she shifted from a micro thinker, she was heavily trained to be a micro thinker. It's actually also her natural disposition. But she had to start thinking at a macro level because she knew now that she had a child who was going to be discriminated against. And she was going to do everything in her power to make sure no matter what, her child was not fucked with. They all were fucked with when the church rejected them. And that was a big change. And I hold them in high regard for how well they took that change. And I really have to say that I also hold in regard the amount of change Heidi as a woman had to do from a very evangelical point of view, where she was, the man's the leader, the whole thing. She just told me about it and I just watched. I found it interesting. But that changed them. It actually changed the power in the relationship. They came together and formed a support group for parents of transgender children. The two adults together did that. So this is the idea of, if you can start to think about bigger picture than what you're doing day to day, because we keep you stuck in the weeds. you're going to see, especially if you know your truth, you're going to see where the opportunities are to actually make change and have a much bigger impact on the world. So money is just one. I want you to pay attention to the money, and I want you to just go ask about where the money goes, how you're spending it, where you're investing. And if you aren't saving and investing, if some of that money isn't going into a 401k, if there's a way to do it because you will pay less on taxes. Absolutely worth it. I need you to look into this. And this is why I want women to be involved in their money. There's a way to do this. So stop thinking about just the tasks you have to do every day and start thinking about, hey, what are we really building here? We should be building a future. Let's have a talk about our future. Maybe it's your once a month date, and maybe you and your partner just go talk about these things. Maybe you're a single woman like me. That's how I used my mom. She was great because I think in some way I was finally living this woman's life that she couldn't live, and she probably would have. Mom was definitely a tomboy. She would have been a different person if she hadn't had to spit out babies right away. I just know it. She had to get away from my dad too, which really held her down. So I want you to think about this is about your economic independence, because right now your risk is that you're going to be dependent, and you could be dependent on somebody who's mismanaging your money. I want you to think about how to you will absorb the pain if your partner invests the money badly. So if you're investing good, make sure you get in those high dividend stocks. That's where I'm putting my money right now. Well, I'm older though, that's why I can't afford a lot of risk. And then you just need to pay attention and look for bad investing. Okay, guys, seriously, when I hear these stories of these idiots who put money in particular into the Trump merchandise, I just get so, I don't want to pay for you on welfare because you had it and you lost it. That's just, I don't want to pay for the money that you lost. I don't want to replace that money that you gave to Trump. And you didn't even get it to Trump. Your partner did. So, okay, there's a macro micro. Let's go to talk about something else here. Let's talk about health. So in the area of health, we have women end up doing a ton of stuff. And I'm going to use health broadly here, but we do the caregiving. And if you have a partner that helps with this, God love you. This is not against them. It's just, I'm going with the typical things. This is kind of the stereotype. All right. There are always going to be the bell curve, right? There's always outliers. There's always people that are different. But women are typically the caregivers. They're making the doctor's appointments. They're managing the medication. They're doing all this. God, it's noisy stuff and it's complicated and it's hard. And then the doctor's appointment changes and you have to have, oh, wait, did you fast for the blood test and all that kind of crap, right? That's where women are. The men, I don't even think the men think about healthcare. I would really be interested, unless they have a medical problem. I'd really be interested in this, even when it comes to their parents and stuff. And I did put parent on here, on purpose. It's a big part of women's lives, taking care of the parents, right? And so I'm not sure, but I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure men's take on healthcare right now is, I can go see a doctor when I want to see them. That's it. Their world is handled. There's nobody trying to mess with their healthcare. They can just go see, they don't even know it's hard to get an appointment. Just to God, I don't think that's even in their awareness, right? So the risk of you not thinking macro around health, and there's more risks than what I put on the slide. One is that you might not get your kids vaccinated. I'm not going to get into the pro or anti-vaccination, but if you were thinking at a macro level, you might understand that those vaccinations are going to keep your kids safe, and they're going to keep your kids safe from other people's kids who didn't get vaccinated, because you don't want your child getting one of those horrible, horrible diseases and getting sick or getting disabled by it. One. So the problem is we keep you micro, then you could sit there and argue about a vaccine, right? Because you're right there on the head of a pin, having an argument about a vaccine. But what I want you to do is stop arguing about the vaccines and go look at the research that shows you on a macro level, they're very, very good for the long-term health of your kids and yourself. I could do a whole podcast on COVID because I am a firm believer that we should not be getting COVID. Everything about it says it's hurting your body for the long term, but we're not going to talk about that right now. But wear a mask. Okay, the other thing is that you may not know that we're facing, if Trump wins, we're facing increased insurance costs, like maybe by $1,000 a month, because they want to privatize everything, guys. They think the free market will decide. I can tell you what the free market does. It doesn't give a shit about you. The free market is not made for civil service. The free market is made for free markets. Taking care of Americans is the job of a government. to an extent, not all the way, but their job is service. So the way they set things up are completely different. It's about access, not limiting your access based on money or surge pricing or any other goddamn thing that's going on that makes us even more of their slaves. More capitalist slaves is what we are. We have to just jump to everything they do. So I'm just saying, you need to understand what's going to happen. The other thing is lack of available health care, especially when it comes to women. 30 states now have anti-abortion laws. That's upset gynecology. That's upset obstetrics. We have issues on the women's world. Men just think of doctors there when they need them. But at a meta level, we need to know where we can get care and how, if that care is going to be available to us at the time we want it. Okay. All right. So the next thing you need to know is you might not be able to get treatment. So we've got backlogs of doctors everywhere, and we are making being a doctor difficult for people who want to go to medical school. Student loans are one way we make it very difficult. And for some reason, there's people on this planet who thinks forgiving student loans is a bad idea. And I don't understand, because it was absolutely the worst kind of lending ever. And if you are so authoritative in your reasoning, please see White Women podcast, because it's all about authoritative reasoning. If you believe you should pay a loan back because someone told you, wake up. Just wake up. That is blind obedience, and those were predatory loans. I have never seen interest rates and compound interest like I've seen on these loans. This is what I'm saying. If we keep you focused on micro, you may not get the macro point of view. And then we're heading quickly. If Project 2025, and if Trump come into this and wins, they win, where we're heading is that we'll no longer be worried about preventing sickness, and we'll mostly be reacting to being sick. We saw that in how Trump handled COVID. He gave no you-know-whats about it. He is so unable to have empathy. Like, that's the narcissism, right? People are like, he's narcissistic. But the narcissistic means you're a sociopath. And a sociopath is unable to care for others by your very nature. They don't feel feelings, right? So your sociopathic Project 2025 and Trump are really putting us in a situation where we won't be preventing disease. We'll just be reacting to it. And that's going to affect all of us, because if the population has sickness, like I do worry about COVID, that will affect many things. They're already finding people are having less reaction time driving. Cognitive decline is by some kind of points, like intellect points go down, your intelligence points go down, because the virus is creating brain fog in your brain. And you can't kick this virus out of your body. It malingers. It's malingering in lots of places in our body, in mucosal linings, in brain matter. It's worth reading about. Okay, so there's one in health. I want you to think macro, not micro. Well, both. We have to do both. When it comes to safety, we women every day, my daily safety. Am I taking care? Is the door locked? Did I lock the car? Can't remember. Did I remember to lock the house? I think I locked it. I always lock the house. I'm compulsive about locking the house. Kids, I want you to go out today, but did you have your helmet and your bike, and you got your safety equipment, and did you bring your shins for soccer? And then you have adapting our behavior. I don't go out at night anymore because it's not safe. Or, I won't go to that part of town. Or so we change our behavior to increase our safety. And men, unless they're a person of color, and I have to give that caveat because it's so different. But for white men, I'm not really sure that they worry about the world not being safe until they go psycho on immigrants. Just freaking psycho. And the thing is, if they would shut up and think a minute, they'd understand that immigrants are serving a very important role in our country. I'm not talking about criminals. I'm not talking about convicts. I'm talking about regular, normal people like you and I, who left our homeland, which must have been extremely difficult to do, brought my kids with me to try to create the American dream. That's like what we are. That's who we are. That's how we were founded, for that purpose. But you've got to be able to think macro and realize those people aren't trying to hurt you. They're afraid. They actually come in here with minus points in power. They have negative points. People with negative power points don't go hurt you unless they're criminal, and there might be a criminal or two. Based on population distribution, there's a good chance there's a criminal. But you know what they're doing at the border? They're catching who those people are. So the racism's got to go. And I think generally the white men who think that there's no danger other than the immigrants who are trying to come take their white jobs, which whatever, like, no, that's not happening. Yeah, that's where men think about safety. They don't think about safety. But here's the deal. Safety is a real concern. It matters. So what might happen if Trump wins and Project 2025 gets in place, because it's already on that path, is we might have more punitive policing, meaning authoritative. So we already have a police problem. Police show up to solve a problem with guns. That's not how most problems need to get solved. That's how you might arrest a bad guy if there's actually a crime being committed at the time. But most of the time, police are supposed to be out there as community ambassadors, making things better, but they show up with guns. So that's a punitive police force. We also might have children convicted as adults. And if you think that's okay, you need to check yourself. If you go look at developmental psychology and how children develop, their executive functioning, that's right here in the front, does not finish developing until they're 24. Did not know that, did you? Okay, so you get the effect. That's the part that lets them make good decisions. When we put 14-year-olds, if we post them on the internet like that sheriff did with their identity, we've ruined that child's life. We're supposed to protect our children, even ones that profess to want to shoot up a school. What makes you want to shoot up a school unless you're a complete sociopath? It means that you're desperate and you're trying to get help. So publicizing that child's face, because you know what? He could be a completely different person by 24. He's got 10 more years of growing up to do. So you're going to see more children convicted as adults because the people who want the bad guys to go away, they don't want to think about it. It's too hard for them to think that there might be shades of gray in there. They just want to lock people up. In fact, now Trump wants to kill them. Trump's new thing is just, we're going to just kill people now that he doesn't like. If you do something that he doesn't like, he's just going to execute you, which is, people, it's so bonkers. I can't believe it. People voting for this man. Okay. And then, of course, I need you to think about when you're thinking micro about your safety every day, they've got you scared and you're paranoid and you're checking for your safety and you're afraid. Being afraid is not coming at the world from a position of power. If you come in, you got to think about what personal freedoms you're trading for your safety. If you look at Project 2025, they got your safety taken care of. In fact, Trump just had that big screen about women are terrified and they like me because they're so afraid. Holy crap. If you're one of those women, I'm going to smack you right now. If you are sitting there being afraid because you won't move and take your own agency into your own hands and vote for candidates that are going to advance women's causes instead of candidates like Trump who are going to actually, Project 2025, the plan is to remove the burden of you being an independent adult from your responsibilities. They don't want women to have any agency. They want you to report into a man. They're either your husband, your father, if you're unmarried. And I guess if you're unmarried without a father, I report to my brothers. That's weird. But they want to remove your agency for you. So you might feel safe. I'm going to tell you, it's a figment of your imagination because you're not any more safe. But what you are is trapped by your own mind. And you have absolute traded freedoms for that illusion of safety. All right, let's go on. I only have a little bit more worked up about this. Okay, the last one, I could have gone on to this all day, but I think you'll get my point. And that's all I want to do. And I wanted to get you thinking about this. My whole thing is you listen to this and then I want you to go away. I want you to sit in front of the TV tonight. And while you're sitting there doing what you normally do, then you go, wait a minute, what if I thought about this, like Jen said, from the opposite point of view? What if I went and asked my partner, like, where do you see us financially when we're 55? What are we doing? Is the house paid for? Where are we invested? Are we traveling? Are we not traveling? Are we throwing big parties for the kids? Are we going to spend all of our money on sending the kids to college, or do we want to make them responsible for that? And we're going to encourage them to go to community college because we're going to actually help make sure that they have a down payment for a house one day. So we'll save for that. Like, you got to figure out what your jam is. And again, I tell you, you've got to know your truth, what matters most to you, because that's how you're going to stay happy and true to yourself. And the ideas that come from that will be really probably healthy because it's true, right? It's true for you. Okay, so it's funny in education that the men folk are going to be worrying about education at this macro level, and the women folk are supposed to worry about it at the small level. So we make sure the kids get to school on time, and we write the notes and get the homework done. And I sound like I'm using a baby voice because that's how it is. It's a bunch of busy work. Make sure the kids get to school, to fill out the forms, do all the stuff you got to do, all that school prep. Not to mention the mommy mafia and the other layers of bureaucracy that are just there to drive you over the edge. We sat next to a woman at Starbucks this morning, and I listened to that woman make 3 different phone calls advocating for her child in school. And I just wanted to go hug her, especially both Heidi and I. We both had kids that needed extra, right? I just wanted to go hug her and go, oh my God. Oh, you're doing yeoman's work. That's just one mother's job. And I'm sure she works because she was on a Zoom meeting later. She probably works, but God, there she is doing that. Is her partner doing it? No. Because they keep us busy. We're busy, 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 busy. But here's the deal. So school's not a man's issue, it's a woman's issue, right? And my kids are fine. My kids are fine. And nothing's going to touch my kids. They could go to homeschool, they could go to whatever school. My kids are fine. My kids are special. They're fine. That is a common male trope, that my kids are better than kids. It doesn't have to be your kids, it's just that they're the better kids. Well, guess what? Education, if you look at Project 2025 and you look at Trump, and this is something for you to think about, however you're thinking about education and your kids and what you want for them, and what you want for yourself too. Education is going to become more and more pay for play. At least that's what that's not the Commonwealth plan. The Commonwealth plan was to fund the crap out of education. And I looked at the education back in my podcast. I have one on the education and what the plans are for the RNC and the DNC. I looked at education. Commonwealth wants to dump some money in education. It's not particularly massively funded right now. Well, it's not massively funded relative to the defense budget. That's back. If you go back, I have it in there about the agencies. But it's interesting that it's in play. Okay. But what the Project 2025 and Trump wants to do is privatize education, right? And guess who benefits from privatized education? Oh, that's right, the affluent. The poor don't benefit from privatized education because what you can afford to pay for with your voucher is going to be the school that takes your kid. I cannot stress this enough. The school has to accept your kid. So you could think this voucher program is fantastic, but remember up in the upper box when I said that often a male will say, my kids are fine. Well, they still have to get into the voucher school. And if you are an outlier, you're not affluent, you're not white, you're not connected, and maybe not Republican, you may not get into the school. Just saying. Got to think about the macro. And then, of course, we're going to have learning controlled by the state, which is interesting because it has been controlled by the state, but it hasn't been controlled by the state. It's been impacted by the state. They're talking about full-on control. Remember, Donald Trump wants to be the executive in charge. He wants everybody, like a business, he wants everybody to report to him, and he's going to fire our civil service workers who have been there trying to run these programs for decades to make them work. Instead of tweaking them, he's just going to get rid of everything, and we're going to fall into a massive chaos. If you think him doing one thing is chaotic, imagine him dismantling everything at once. Now, it's not Trump. This is really important. And I think people keep believing it's going to be Trump, but it's not going to be Trump, guys. You have to just think that this man's an idiot. He is not smart enough to do all this. Please concede on that point because it's so apparent. This is not a smart man. So what Project 2025, and Nicole Wallace talks about this all the time. They have the list of people they've hired. Jen Psaki or Rachel talked about it last night. They already are hiring. Guys, you can go on the web and apply for one of the jobs in the Project 2025 administration. They're hiring now. I think they have 2,000 people already that they're not hired, but they're on track. They're in the track because you have to win an election first to get hired. Point is that you need to be aware that Project 2025 is trying to decimate all of this infrastructure. And you and I both know you can't decimate infrastructure and be successful. You can gently take it apart and rebuild it, but you can't just blow it up. All right. And then, of course, I have an issue with how the GOP and the Republicans in Project 2025 is going to marginalize kids that are different. So that's handicapped kids, that's transgender kids, that's gay kids, that's kids that want to wear their Native American hair to school, that's Black kids who have their hair in cornrows. It's any kid that's different, that doesn't conform to some norm. And I don't know what the standard is, so I'm not sure. It seems to vary. It's not like there's a rubric out there. You just check the boxes and say, oh, look, I can go to school because I conform to all of this. I happen to live in a world where like kids that don't particularly conform all the time. I love free thinkers. I love creative thinkers, but then that's me. You get my point. It's macro versus micro, and I want you to consider how you're approaching the world. I'm not saying you can throw out your micro responsibilities because we all have them and they're just wonderful, aren't they? They're not my strength, but they exist. But you can start to think about what you don't know. And that might be the best way to come at this is like, what do I not know? That's meta, that's micro, that's big. That might affect my family or the things that I care about or my reality or my country in a way I hadn't thought about it before because I've let somebody else do that thinking for me. And that's just it. It's not your fault. We're absolutely culturally trained to be the people who are supposed to be happy with what we're told and are supposed to be happy in our roles. And our roles have been defined for us by the culture. And here we are. So we're fighting back. You couldn't find somebody better to fight with than an ornery son of a bitch like me. So I hope that this made you think a little bit. I absolutely know it's important for the election, but I think it's really important for us. It's important for us to find our agency and find our truth and find our way to have a legacy, to make a difference in this world. Thank you for listening. Talk to you tomorrow.